I've given my life to figuring out how to lead well the next generation, because if we fail to lead them well, we will have reached an impasse, and the baton will not be passed to those young 20-somethings. We're not going to be around forever. I think they're going to stand on our shoulders and be taller than we are. I think they represent what's coming. I think what we're offering now is a key to the future. And yes, it involves young people, but more than that, it involves let's keep succeeding well into the future.
Have a seat, sir.
All right. Good to be with you.
So glad you're here.
Me too. I am too. I can hardly wait for this conversation.
Yes. And it's been great having you and working with you on your new LeaderPass and having you at the studio and our teams getting to know who you are as a person. We've always seen you as, I know you always push back on the word expert, but because you're a humble guy, but you really are. So we've enjoyed having you here and being around you.
My pleasure. Well, we've all heard of the 10,000 hour rule. I think I passed that one a long time ago because I'm so old.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning of my career, my first leadership role back 45 years ago or so, I was a leader and I was already focusing on the next generation, even though I was a part of the next generation.
Yep.
But I saw a widening gap even then between older and younger. And I was thinking, unless we figure out how to build a bridge instead of a wall between generations, we're not going to get done what we really want to get done.
You're in your early, in my mind, where you kind of just took off initially was the whole idea of Habituits. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that was inspired from?
Yeah. So training has often been done with kind of lectures or training talks that we do. And I was seeing that might be good for the person that's 45 or older, but young people, young staff members, which now make up the majority of the workforce, under 40, 20s and 30s, we're just not connecting with the lecture. So I found out a long time ago, pictures beat lectures every day. So Habitudes are images that form leadership habits and attitudes.
Okay.
And it's a way of starting a conversation that we need to have. It's not just hanging out, but we're teaching a principle, but there's an image.
Yeah.
And pictures are worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
So it started an employee engagement. So rivers and floods was all about focus. Floods, that's water that's not focused. Rivers, that's water that's focused. We need to help them find their river and find clarity. But I just found out it was better than a talk on focus when you could look at an image and then refer back to that image later and go, river, flood. Oh yeah, I remember.
That's
kind of
comes back, and that's now you are in picture in schools, universities. Is that reaching?
10,000 schools, lots of universities, lots of NCAA athletic programs, and professional teams have now begun to use these. Just because you think about a football field, you see on the sideline images for the plays and snap counts and formations, not this long list of hand signals or whatever. So I think images are the language of the 21st century, not words. So I love words, but I think that the key is, can we use imagery for our mission, our values, our vision, and what we need to teach and train these employees to do?
So generationally, I mean, when you think about your studies and your research, even early days, your point is that when you began, it was really in that realizing the differences, I guess. I guess communication, leadership with the
absolutely. So I'm a baby boomer, so I'm among the oldest in the workforce today. Many of us are retired, but I started in the 80s when Gen X became the new kids on the block, and they were different than the boomers, demanding authenticity and keep it real and don't do this overproduced thing, whatever. And then the millennials came along, and then the Gen Zers, and soon the alpha generation will be coming along into the workplace. So I just thought to myself, just like we value the diversity of genders and ethnicities and income, I think there's a diversity of generations that we're going to have to figure out, how do we best communicate and connect with these people?
So 80s to now, it's been a few years.
Yes, it has.
What has anything changed, or have you seen things evolve? I know the differences that you talk about in those generations, but what's a noticeable thing that you're seeing now that's a big difference from back then?
A couple of things come to mind. One is communication and preferences in communication. So imagery is great. You can teach it quick, but more than that, attention spans are lower. The average teenager in the year 2000 had an attention span of 12 seconds. Which doesn't mean they can't pay attention to something longer, but they get diverted unless it's quicker, very engaging. Today it's 8 seconds. So I would say to teachers and trainers, good luck with that, you know.
Amazing.
Another one would be just, and this is data driven, not my opinion, but the fragility of people just being fragile. Hard feedback seems harsh. I remember in my 20s, John Maxwell would give me some pretty hard feedback, and I knew that's just part of the deal, man. I signed up for this. Well, today it's like, oh my gosh, they might get triggered, or something's wrong. Maybe a lawsuit's in the making. When in reality, it's just we need to have hard conversations, and we need to figure out how to have those hard conversations. So I'm thinking some of those differences could be a game changer unless we figure out how to solve this problem. Yeah.
Big time, big time. And you work with a lot of companies. For those that don't know you, you go into organizations
Yeah.
and really bring this knowledge to them and work with their teams on how to manage this new generation or
Yeah,
this next
I do. We
generation.
do events, and I'm thrilled about this LeaderPass video course because it's going to give them micro learning segments,
Mm.
quick segments where we talk about hiring or retention, or how do we have that hard conversation and offer feedback to a fragile person, perhaps.
Yep.
So in the course, Jamie, you know this, but I try to offer some real quick handles. So one of them, for instance, is I think when we interview Generation Zers for the job, I think we need to do it different than we did the Xers and the Boomers.
Okay.
So one of my little acronyms, it's pretty simple to remember, but it's perks. We all want perks, right? Well, I think the HR hiring manager needs to remember PERKS. The letter P is you need to talk about preferences. Gen Z is going to have some preferences that in the beginning, if you find them out, you might be able to go, okay, no problem. I think we can do that. Or that might be your, that's a game stopper right there. I need to show you the door. The letter E is expectations. That's even stronger than preferences. I just believe that conflict expands based on the difference between expectations and reality.
Mm.
And they can come in with very different expectations because all they've known is the classroom, not the workroom. And oh my gosh, it's helpful to know right up front they have this expectation. The letter R is requirements. We're finding more and more hiring managers saying they're requiring that we do something for this cause or that cause or for the community. And by the way, I think we should, but you just need to know that up front, not 1 year into the tenure and they're squabbling over something that you had no idea was an issue.
Mm.
The letter K is keys. I think in the interview process, you ought to know the keys to their heart. Knowing what they're passionate about. That might even help you put them on the right task or
Mm.
job. And then the letter S, of course, is salary. Sometimes we don't know that until what they're wanting may not be realistic for a job place. Now, this is not insulting either side, the hiring manager or the job candidate, but we just need to know these things up front because the differences, the gap may just be really big right up front.
Yep. And what I love about that in that approach, and really how you're approaching The Future Begins with Z,
Yeah,
which I love that title, by
yeah,
the way,
yeah,
um, is you're really equipping the managers and the people that are more our age
yeah,
on how to communicate, how to look for those things that you just described in perks,
yeah,
and how to implement it,
yeah.
because it can be frustrating.
No doubt about it. And both sides, young and old, tend to get frustrated instead of fascinated with each other. So, you know what I found, Jamie, when I talk about this on this course or live and in person, oftentimes leaders will listen with both ears, with one as a professional, but with the other as a parent. Because oftentimes we have Gen Zers in our own home. They're middle school, high school, or college students, and we're having the same struggle at the house that we have in the workplace. And I find that too often, we just give up.
Yeah.
I read recently some data. 4 out of 5 hiring managers just say, I I can't even interview these young people now." And I just feel like they're our future.
Yeah.
Like it or not, ready or not, they represent where we're going, not where we've been.
Yeah.
So we've got to figure this out. And I think it's up to the leader to do that figuring out.
Yeah. And as you say that, I can hear my own thoughts about how when we were told, whether it was on the field, in a
Yeah.
sport
Yes.
or in a classroom or in a
Yeah.
workplace, just we had to just adapt, meaning us
Yes.
as young people, when we're our
Yes.
generation. So it makes it harder to look over and go, just figure it out.
Yes.
Why aren't you doing that?
That's what I wanna do too. I mean, I hear so many leaders say, "Why don't they just figure it out?" Here's what I've noticed. Since the beginning of my career, the whole narrative of work has shifted. Adam Grant, organizational psychologist at Penn, says we're experiencing the democratization of the workforce. So it's more democratized. There's power coming in the employee. So when I first started my career, a typical boss would say, "Hey, leave your personal problems at the door. You come in and get your work done." Today, it's bring your whole self to work. And that might mean emotions and downsides and upsides. And God knows what's going to be talked about for 45 minutes in the break room. So, again, we are going to have to just do a little adapting. And one thing I say very often is I think the answer is almost always in the middle.
Mm.
We're going to have to lean, but we're going to have to ask them to lean in.
Mhm.
The workplace is different than a classroom. But I think meeting in the middle is where we're going to find most of our magic along the way.
That's awesome. Do you view this, since you talk about meeting in the middle, and I
Yeah.
think about the content that I've heard you teach,
Yeah.
watched you teach with, by the way, I love, love, love that you're on video doing it. We talked about pictures a minute ago with
Yeah.
Habituits and how
Yeah.
that's such a key component of learning.
Yeah.
And get,
It's true.
you are such a great communicator and on camera and on video. And you literally took, I think you ended up with, was it 50 micro lessons by the time
Yeah.
we were done?
Yeah. It's a lot.
It was a lot, but what I love about how you've done it is each one you can kind of dip in and out of. So if I'm a manager, if I'm an owner or business
Yeah.
leader, I can find something that's probably a pain point in
Yeah.
that moment.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm forced to go all the way through. You're letting me
Yeah.
kind of meeting the need, where it is. So I think
Absolutely.
that's critical. And your communication style is so good and so inviting. In that meet in the middle comment though, I want to ask you, should we expect Gen Z to learn how to communicate with the older generation, or is this most of the burden on on our shoulders
Yeah. Yeah.
to do?
I think it's both and. Clearly, they're going to have to make some adjustments from the world of education to the world of real life workplace. So I say this with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek, but a young person might come in and say, "Oh, I understand skydiving. I watched 7 YouTube videos on it." That's not quite as powerful as somebody that says, "I've been skydiving 7 times. I understand this." So I think the real life experience that they may lack, having been on TikTok, but not perhaps in a workplace, is huge. So one of the items that I think is a big issue is having that hard conversation. Every boss will tell you that's where things break down. Either the boss says, "I don't do that very well. I run from conflict," or maybe the young team member or whatever, might be any age, might have a hard time. So I have another little acronym that I call ALEG. So for years, we've all used that term. This is a leg you got to stand on. The letter A reminds me when I need to have a hard conversation, I need to start with asking, not telling them they've made a mistake. When I ask, I think they feel valued. I'm asking them about their thinking and their thought process and their decision-making process. The letter L reminds me at that point I need to listen well, which I don't intuitively do super well. I've had to learn to listen to my own adult children and to young team members. When I listen, they feel heard. The letter E is empathize. Once I've listened, I need to be able to communicate. I'm understanding what you're saying. I get it. I might say, "Oh, I had no idea," or, "My gosh, I bet that made you feel horrible when that happened." But now they feel understood. And when I've done those, Jamie, now I've earned my right to do the letter G, which is what I wanted to do from the beginning, which is to guide them. But now I've earned it through relationship, not the badge on my chest.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. Boy, if we could have that part of our routine
Yes.
and almost look at that. And those are great communication skills anyway, but even more
Well, yeah.
importantly for this.
I've had to learn it myself. I'm learning as I research, and I'm realizing I need to do that with so and so.
Yeah.
So it's been good for me as well.
What hope do we have? I mean, as you look towards the future or what we've got ahead of us,
Yeah.
There's a lot I think I've heard you say that Gen Z brings to the table,
No doubt.
to the older demographic in the workplace.
The major truth of this video course and the book, The Future Begins with Z, is this. I saw a pattern. In fact, more than a pattern, I saw a paradox that I think was absolutely frustrating leaders. Here it is. The age of authority seems to be going down, meaning kids are coming in with a natural savviness to technology, to AI, to how to monetize TikTok, whatever. They just are really good with it. So their authority comes in not from a position, from the expertise they have on technology. But at the same time, the age of maturity seems to be going up. So it used to be if you were 18, you're considered a man or a woman and you take responsibility and take initiative. Well, now I've lost count of the number of managers that have said 26 is the new 18.
Wow.
Emotionally and socially, they're not
Yeah.
bad. They're wonderful people, but
Mhm.
they're young and perhaps not ready to be an adult
Mhm.
when we were ready to be an adult. So you can imagine how that would be frustrating. Darn it, they come in with authority. I don't like that. They're smarter than I am.
Yeah.
But yet their maturation, hey, look me in the eye, shake my hand, that sort of thing may not be there. So what I'm saying to leaders, and in this course, I essentially say this, we're going to have to listen more than we've ever listened. I'm going to have to coach more than we've ever coached.
Mm. Wow. Which means I need to brush up on my skills,
Yeah,
and
that's
others
right.
do too. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That is great. But if you get that right, and I know you've been working with
yeah,
organizations
yeah,
from sports to corporate,
yeah,
to even ministry organizations that need this, as they implement this,
yeah.
what are you seeing happen?
Well, when leaders like you and I get it, it can be transformational. I tell the story in the video and the book of Colin Webb. He's a dear friend of mine. He's in his 20s. I've known him since he was in high school. But Colin was so smart, he got an invitation to go to MIT, graduated with honors from MIT, and then had a lot of job offers. But he decided to go to Detroit and work for General Motors in the smart car division. So, smart kid, smart car. But within the first several months, you can imagine this young, very intelligent professional sees some places they can improve things. They were using some old school strategies and perhaps didn't do enough professional development,
Mm.
things like that. So he began to scribble them down and he took them to his supervisor. Well, he was shut down. Not in a horrible way, but hey, you need to be around here 8 years before you have a
Right.
voice. So just keep your nose to the grindstone and be quiet. Well, Colin could have done that, but he's Gen Zer, he's an audacious young man. So he writes an email to the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra, and he lists his ideas. Well, she replies and she goes, "These are great ideas. Let me take them to the executive team." When she takes them to the executive team, they agree these are good ideas. But Jamie, by the time they get pushed down to the middle manager and the supervisor that Colin had, once again, it was stuck. Hey, you need to keep your nose to the grindstone, just be quiet and get your work done. So Colin, without wanting to do this, left General Motors within a year. Since then has started two companies, sold them both, has monetized his gift,
Wow.
is a multimillionaire in his 20s. I don't think I can do that. But here's what I would say. General Motors had an opportunity with Colin.
Right.
Now, certainly they're doing many great things, but I'm just saying that picture is a picture that happens thousands of times every day in America when we just don't do the listening that we need to do. And maybe the coaching that we need to offer. We're just too frustrated that they don't get how we do things here.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have to be learners as well as leaders.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, this new book is not out, and I want to speak to this for a second.
Yeah.
This is really brilliant. Instead of the traditional,
Yeah.
write the book, publish the book is out. Now I'm going to do a companion training around the
Yeah.
book
Yeah.
that we see all the time.
Yeah.
You are doing it in reverse,
Yeah.
which is super cool.
Yeah.
Which means that the book's coming out in November. I
Uh-huh.
suppose some people will see this when it's already out, and
Yeah.
it's a phenomenal manuscript and book, and this will work along with it, but you're launching this first. Why do you
Yes.
feel like this is a smart move to educate people now? Number one, I know we don't want to wait till
Yes,
that
that's right.
long,
Yeah.
and that's just publishing timing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, a couple of reasons that come to mind. One, you and I have known each other for a while, but I began to think, first of all, this is dated material. In other words, if we release it a year from now, some things will change. The videos are current.
Yep.
It's what we just shot, and it's real time. Also, we've talked about keeping this dynamic. We can update the data when necessary. We can update the stories. Here's some strategies we just picked up
Yeah.
in 2029 or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was one. And books are hard to change. Videos are easy to change. So
Yep.
we just felt like we would stay current with a course like this,
Mhm.
keep it dynamic, and put the best stuff we can out there to the leaders who need it right now
Yeah.
desperately.
I love it. And that is, in fact, we just had that meeting talking about you are around enough individuals and organizations to take best practices as you see
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
and add that to LeaderPass, add it to your platform where it is evergreen, but it's also alive.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that. And you're not stopping. You're moving,
Yeah.
you're going, you're always learning. And I think that's going to be an amazing value for people who subscribe and who do it.
Well,
Mhm.
I think so. I sure hope so. I'm in the learning process myself. This is a moving target, but I've given my life to figuring out how to lead well the next generation because if we fail to lead them well, we will have reached an impasse, and the baton will not be passed to those young 20 somethings when they're ready to and needing to take charge. We're not going to be around forever. But I've also thought many, many times, I think they're going to stand on our shoulders and be taller than we are. I think they represent what's coming. I represent most of my life is in the 20th century, not the 21st century. I hate to say it, but it's true. So I think what we're offering now is a key to the future. And yes, it involves young people, but more than that, it involves let's keep succeeding well into the future. And may the brand that we lead, that whatever the company is, I work with Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, Home Depot. These are brands that continue to work because they get the next gen ready.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So Tim, when I meet people, often, there's a pivotal time in their life where they either get inspired by someone that they see on a stage
Mhm.
or hear on a podcast or watch on a podcast,
Yeah,
and they have this moment where they
yeah,
think, I may have something to offer to the
yeah,
world.
yeah,
Not that they're big shots, not
yeah,
that they're like,
yeah,
the highest level of experience, but that
right.
they just have something of value.
Yeah,
And as you know, what we try to do is inspire them and
yeah,
come alongside them, much in the ways that, now, granted, you've already written your book, you're a
yeah,
polished
yeah, yeah.
across the board, but we try to come in and help with either a lab session or sit down and
Yes,
just help them diagram everything out.
yeah,
But it's that, what I see is that first step of
mhm,
courage to say, somebody is going to benefit from what you have.
yeah,
And in a lot of cases, people who are not famous are able to monetize their expertise
no doubt.
with us, with LeaderPass, and following this kind of courage.
Yeah,
So, what would you say to someone who's like teetering on the fence
yes,
and they're
yes.
like, "Man, I'm not quite where Tim is, but I may have something."
Yeah. Well, I think most people are there. And I think sometimes we have this great thought or this great insight or this nugget that came to us, but we get in our own way. So, what happens typically inside the human brain is we get really excited about this new idea, and either in our excitement about the idea or our nervousness to be able to convey it well,
Mhm.
we breathe too fast, we vomit our thought onto an audience unbeknownst to them,
Yeah.
and they're not even quite sure they've caught it. We know he's excited, but we're not quite sure what he's saying.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage anybody that's thinking, I think I've got this thought, I want to communicate better. They can do this.
Mm.
Communication is within every one of our reach. We may not be John Maxwell or Zig Ziglar or Tony Robbins or whatever, but we could be us.
Mm.
But here's the advice I give to everyone that wants to take a step in communication. When you've got an idea to share, people in the audience need a point for their head, a picture for their heart, and a practice for their hands.
Mm.
What I mean by that is they need to know here's the one big idea. Don't try to share 20 big ideas. Here's it. Dr. King had said, I have a dream, not I have 17 dreams. So share the point for their head. Here's the point. But then people usually need a story or a picture or some sort of metaphor or narrative to say, here's what it looks like in real life. So point for the head, picture for their heart. And then I think most people go, man, that's a great idea. What do I do? That's the practice for their hands.
Mhm.
Here's one step I'm asking you to take. I would just ask anybody watching this, try that out.
Mhm.
Think of a notion that you have and boil it down to a point, a picture, and a practice, and see if that doesn't help you share the idea, even in 5 minutes, next chance you get.
Love that. Love that. I do want to ask you a question because I view you through a certain lens as a creator, a content creator, a thought leader, an expert. And I know those phrases
Yeah.
are tossed around a lot,
Yeah.
but I do know I've seen and I've known you and been around you for 20 something years,
Yeah.
early Tim Cartoon Man
Yeah. Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
which is a whole other story that we always smile when we talk about it. But when you think about how you've written so many books, you've published how many now? How many books do you have out there?
41.
So you've
Yeah.
got 41 books.
Yeah.
Most people watching this might sense inside of them there may be a book in there
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
first question I would ask you about that is what got you off first square one? I mean, as you were thinking about it, and what would you say to somebody who's like literally thinking, I know I should do this, but
Yeah.
I'm afraid to do it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the first book I wrote, I'm embarrassed by. I want to go back and apologize to everyone. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what I was talking about. It was helpful, and I was asked to write it by the publisher, and it was about training young people for leadership. So the
Cool.
very thing I've
Cool.
given my life to. But writing got into my system, and I began to think what a cool feeling it is to travel to Chicago, let's say, meet somebody that said, "You changed my life," and I've never met them before, but they had read something that I had written.
Mhm.
So I just feel now that writing is a way to stay dynamic.
Mhm.
I write articles and blogs and so forth, but I now have a passion to help others continue writing,
Okay.
or maybe perhaps aspiring authors write their first book.
Yeah.
So I've started something called A Book in a Weekend, and it's a kickoff experience where we help aspiring authors meet publishers, best-selling authors, editors, ghostwritings, and then we coach them through the years. So it's a joy to get to help other people maybe take the same path I've taken and take their area of expertise and run with it and help thousands of others.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what we've talked about I also think you bring a component beyond writing, and that's your ability to communicate. There's a lot of people that we work with, and I'll speak to this
Mhm.
just from my experience with
Yeah.
LeaderPass, who have something inside of them. They have an expertise.
Yeah.
There may be real world practitioners. They may be somebody who's inspired by something that happened in their life.
Mhm.
They may not be great writers. Now, I know
Yeah.
you can find writing
Yeah. Yeah.
partners, and
Yeah.
I think for those that can't,
Yeah.
some are, though, good communicators.
Yes.
Even if it's just conversationally,
Mhm.
they get excited, they're passionate about
Yeah.
it. You have that gift as well of communication. And I think that, there's probably a lot of people that may think, I don't know if I'm going to write the book, but boy, that guy and how he organizes
Mhm.
his thoughts and
Yeah.
how he communicates can inspire them too.
Yeah.
And especially with video, I think I heard recently that 1 billion people watch podcasts
Oh my
on
gosh.
YouTube.
Oh my
I would
goodness.
have thought
Yeah.
Spotify,
Yeah.
Apple iTunes.
Yeah.
The recent stat was they're watching what we're doing right now.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
think about how many times you learn from someone sitting here
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
maybe you may never have read a Tim Elmore
It's
book.
true.
Boy, you're falling in love with Tim right now.
Yeah.
And then when you do a video series like you are and you're communicating, they see you, they see your heart, they see your eyes, they see you.
Yeah.
And I think that
And
just goes a long way.
yeah, I do too. I think there's something that happens when the communication isn't only on a page, but it's verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal, and all of that happens in situations like this. So it's a great video has been a great gift, has it not?
Oh yeah.
Been to the world, and you have capitalized on it. But I'm thrilled at the kind of help you're offering at LeaderPass, and now I get to be a part of the lineup to really just bless people and give them tools in their toolbox to lead the next gen
Well,
well.
you were going to
Yeah.
do it. I have no doubt about that. Let's talk about where they can find and learn more. And I want to address like if they want you to come speak because you're able to come talk to organizations on how to implement this.
Yeah.
Obviously, resources you have out there, but where's the best place for people to go
Yeah.
to learn more and
Well,
connect?
the best place to learn about me is just my name, timelmore.com. That's my website. I founded an organization back in 2003 called Growing Leaders, and that's for educators who want to bring these kinds of tools to their students, their staff, their faculty, and even understand Gen Z staff members. So Growing Leaders is also growingleaders.com would
Yeah.
both be places where they could find these kinds of tools.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna be getting the word out to folks that we have contact with about your new LeaderPass. You'll obviously be on LeaderPass with that. But man, it's been exciting working with you. I look forward to more to come. I want to
Yeah,
do this
me too.
more and pick certain
do
deep
too.
dive subjects because I have a feeling this is going to touch a lot of people in a lot of ways. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Jamie. Good to be with you.
All right, up high.
Bye-bye.